The diplomatic station orbiting Krell 9 hummed with nervous energy. Ambassador Lyra Chen stood in the observation deck, watching the sleek alien vessels drift past the viewport. She adjusted her expedition jacket, the one with reinforced shoulders and too many pockets. It had seen her through 3 first-contact missions, and she wasn't about to leave it behind for some fancy diplomatic robe. Behind her, the Krell delegation waited in the docking bay. The reptilian species had requested this meeting after months of tense negotiations. They were apex predators on their world, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Their reputation preceded them, warriors and hunters who measured respect in displays of strength. Lyra's assistant, a young man named Marcus, fidgeted with his tablet. "Ambassador, the Krell chieftain is bringing his family. That includes the younglings. Protocol suggests we maintain a distance of at least 10 feet. "Noted," Lyra said, though she had no intention of cowering. Humans hadn't clawed their way to the stars by being timid. The airlock hissed open. Chieftain Vexthor entered first, his crest fully extended in a show of dominance. Behind him came his mate, Selnara, and 3 cubs. The younglings were smaller than Lyra expected, barely reaching her waist, but their eyes gleamed with the same predatory intelligence as their parents. The greeting ceremony went smoothly. Lyra bowed at exactly the right angle, spoke the proper words in their clicking language, and presented the ceremonial gift, a blade forged from earth metals. Vexthor accepted it with what might have been approval, his tail swishing in a slow rhythm. Then came the tour of the station. The Krell moved through the corridors like they owned them, examining everything with keen interest. Their cubs darted ahead, poking into corners and sniffing at ventilation grates. Station security had been briefed to give them space. They reached the botanical garden, a sprawling dome filled with plants from a dozen worlds. The Krell adults paused to admire a particularly vicious-looking carnivorous plant from their home system. The cubs, however, had other interests. The smallest of the 3, a female named Krisha, fixated on Lyra's jacket. The human ambassador stood near a fountain, discussing water purification systems with Vexthor, when she felt a tug at her side. She glanced down. Krisha had approached silently, a feat impressive for a species built for hunting. The cub's eyes were locked on the dangling zipper pull of Lyra's jacket pocket. It swayed slightly as Lyra gestured while talking. To a young predator, it must have looked like prey. Before Lyra could react, Krisha pounced. Her small but sharp teeth clamped down on the fabric near the pocket, catching the reinforced edge of the jacket. The cub's hunting instincts kicked in, and she began to shake her head, trying to tear away her prize. The conversation stopped. Every eye turned to the spectacle of a Krell youngling hanging from the human ambassador's jacket, tiny legs dangling above the ground. Krisha's tail whipped back and forth with the effort. Marcus reached for his tablet, probably to call security. The other Krell tensed, uncertain how the human would react to having a chieftain's offspring attached to her clothing. Vexithor's crest flattened, a sign of concern. Lyra looked down at the cub. Krisha's eyes had widened slightly, as if she'd just realized her mistake, but her pride wouldn't let her release her grip. The jacket's tough material hadn't torn, which meant the cub was now in an awkward position. Too stubborn to let go, too small to do any real damage. A smile tugged at Lyra's lips, then a chuckle. Then, to everyone's surprise, she began to laugh. Not a nervous titter, but a genuine warm laugh that echoed through the garden. She slowly lifted her arm, raising the jacket and the still-attached cub with it. Krisha hung there, teeth locked on the fabric, tail now curled in what might have been embarrassment. Her tiny growls of determination continued even as her siblings began to make chittering sounds. "Well," Lyra said in perfect Krell, "you've got a strong grip. Your parents must be proud." The tension shattered like glass. Selnara made a sound that took the translators a moment to interpret. It was laughter. The Krell were laughing. Vexthor's chest began to heave with deep, rumbling sounds of amusement. The other two cubs joined in with high-pitched chirps. Marcus stared in disbelief as the entire diplomatic situation transformed. Other Krell guards who had been stationed around the garden began to show signs of mirth, their crests bobbing. Lyra continued to hold her arm up, giving Krisha a gentle shake. "You planning to let go anytime soon, little hunter?" The cub's eyes darted to her father. Vexthor clicked something in their rapid dialect. Slowly, reluctantly, Krisha opened her jaws and dropped to the ground. She immediately sat back on her haunches, trying to look dignified despite having just been dangling from an alien's jacket. Lyra crouched down, bringing herself to eye level with the youngling. She examined her jacket, running her fingers over the small tooth marks. "Good strong bite, but next time, try asking before you attack someone's clothes." Krisha tilted her head, processing the words. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out with one small clawed hand and gently patted the jacket, a gesture of apology in Krell culture. The garden erupted in sound. The adult Krell were now fully engaged in what could only be described as raucous laughter. They slapped their tails on the ground, a sign of genuine amusement. Even the station's security chief, a gruff woman who'd served in the Earth Defense Force, was grinning from her position near the exit. Vexthor approached Lyra, his massive form casting a shadow over her. For a moment, she wondered if she'd somehow broken protocol. Then the chieftain placed one clawed hand on his chest and bowed, deeper than before. "Ambassador Chen," he said in heavily accented English, "you have shown great humor in the face of a young hunter's boldness. This is a rare quality. Among my people we value strength, but we also value the ability to laugh at chaos." Selnara joined him, scooping up Krisha, who squirmed in her mother's arms. "Your garment is strong. It did not tear, and you did not show anger or fear. You simply lifted her up and laughed. This tells us much about humans." Lyra stood, brushing off her knees. "On Earth, we have a saying. Children will be children, whether they have 2 legs or 4, and whether they have flat teeth or sharp ones." The translation seemed to delight the Krell. Vexthor's crest rose again, but this time in a gesture of respect rather than dominance. "We came here uncertain of your people. We heard that humans were soft, that they avoided conflict, that they could not understand the ways of predators." He gestured to his daughter. "But you wear your battle gear even to peace talks, and when challenged by a cub, you responded with strength and laughter." "Battle gear?" Marcus whispered, confused. Lyra touched her jacket. "It's seen me through sandstorms on Rigel 4, acid rain on Vesper Colony, and a very angry swarm of insects on Tau Ceti. If I'm going somewhere new, I wear something practical." Selnara made an approving sound. "Practical, yes. We understand practical." She set Krisha down and spoke to her in rapid Krell. The cub nodded seriously, then approached Lyra again. This time she didn't bite. Instead, she touched the jacket with both hands, examining the material with careful claws. She looked up at Lyra and chittered a question. "She wants to know what it's made from," Vexthor translated, amused. "Synthetic fibers, reinforced with carbon weave. It's designed to resist tearing and provide some protection from environmental hazards." Lyra unzipped one of the many pockets, pulling out a protein bar. "And it holds snacks." The cub's eyes widened. Snacks were a universal concept. "May I?" Lyra asked Selnara, holding up the bar. The mother considered, then nodded. Lyra broke the bar into pieces and handed them to each cub. They sniffed suspiciously before nibbling. The taste seemed to meet with approval, based on their tail movements. The rest of the tour proceeded with a completely different energy. The Krell delegation relaxed, asking questions with genuine curiosity rather than the guarded suspicion from before. The cubs stayed close to Lyra, occasionally tugging at her jacket for attention, but never biting again. In the station's conference room, over cups of heated beverages, the real negotiations began. Vexthor leaned forward, his expression serious. "Ambassador Chen, we came prepared to test you, to see if humans were worthy of alliance. We have been disappointed by other species who speak of strength, but show only weakness when challenged." "And?" Lyra asked, sipping her coffee. "You were challenged by the smallest among us, and you responded with confidence and joy. You did not strike back. You did not retreat. You simply adapted." He spread his claws on the table. "This is what we hoped to find. A species that understands both the hunt and the humor in life's unexpected moments." The negotiations that followed were the smoothest of Lyra's career. The Krell signed trade agreements, defense pacts, and cultural exchange programs. They invited human delegations to their homeworld and agreed to send their own people to Earth. As the meeting concluded, Krisha approached one final time. She held something in her small claws, a tooth, her baby tooth, freshly shed. She placed it in Lyra's hand and chirped something. Vexthor's eyes widened. "She offers you her first shed tooth. This is a great honor among our young. It means she has claimed you as part of her pack." Lyra closed her fingers around the small tooth, surprisingly sharp for something so tiny. "I'm honored, Krisha. I'll keep it safe." The cub's tail swished happily, and she scampered back to her mother. Later, as the Krell delegation prepared to depart, Vexthor pulled Lyra aside. "There will be others who test you, Ambassador. Other species who will not be convinced by words alone. Remember this day. Sometimes the best diplomacy comes not from grand gestures, but from how we handle the small, unexpected moments." Lyra nodded, her hand unconsciously touching the jacket pocket where she'd placed the tooth. "We humans have learned to adapt. We've had to. We might not be the strongest or the fastest, but we're survivors. And we've learned that sometimes the best response to a challenge is a good laugh." The chieftain's expression softened into something that might have been a smile, if Krell could smile. "Perhaps that is your greatest strength. Not your weapons or your ships, but your ability to find joy even when a predator's cub hangs from your clothing." As the alien vessels departed, Marcus turned to Lyra with an expression of disbelief. "That just happened. A first contact situation was resolved because you didn't panic when a baby alien bit your jacket." Lyra grinned, watching the ships disappear into the star field. "Marcus, I've learned something in all my years doing this job. The universe is vast and strange and full of beings we don't understand. But some things are universal. Parents love their children. Cubs are curious and sometimes stupid, and laughter, real genuine laughter, translates across every language barrier we've ever encountered. So the secret to galactic diplomacy is a good sense of humor? And a jacket that can survive anything," Lyra added, patting the worn fabric fondly. "Never underestimate the importance of good gear." The story spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Within a week, every human ambassador had heard about the incident. It became a teaching moment at the Academy, an example of adaptability and cultural sensitivity. More importantly, it became a story the Krell told their own younglings, about the human who lifted one of their cubs and laughed instead of striking back. Trade between Earth and Krell flourished. Cultural exchanges became common, and whenever young Krell visited human stations, they would inevitably ask to see the jacket that could not be torn, which became something of a legend among their people. Lyra kept Krisha's tooth in a small case on her desk. Years later, when Krisha had grown into a formidable warrior herself, she visited Earth. She found Lyra in her office and placed another gift on the desk, a jacket made from Krell armor hide, with reinforced pockets and room for snacks. "So your cubs have something to bite that won't embarrass them later," Krisha said in perfect English, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Lyra laughed, the same warm laugh from that day in the garden, and the sound echoed through the halls of the embassy, a reminder that sometimes the smallest moments create the strongest bonds.